Hello and welcome back to the Education Corner podcast. Today we are speaking to Mr. John Hetherington, who is the headmaster of Moor House School in Frensham. Moor House provides education for boys aged 8 to 18 who thrive in a specialist learning environment due to specific learning difficulties, developmental language disorders and associated conditions. Keep listening to find out about their mainstream curriculum, their boarding, their facilities, and more information about the learning support that they offer.
Be able to spend some time talking to you today, John, the headmaster, John Hetherington of Moor House School. And what we really, for our listeners, want to discuss with you is to be able to share more information about Moor House and the work that you do at the school. So what would you describe as the main ethos and aim of Moor House School?
Well, thank you, Chloe. And this is a good, exciting opportunity to be able to talk about a school that I love. So Moor House is full of really bright, really intelligent young men, but who would just perhaps struggle to really achieve their potential within a more mainstream environment. And so often they're left feeling that they might be stupid and don't get to really understand just how clever they are. And yet we might have pupils who might be on the 99th centile for non-verbal reasoning, but because they have weak literacy or because their language development is just a little bit delayed and it takes them a little bit longer to sequence their ideas and find the vocabulary that they want to use, they believe they're not as clever as their peers. And I suppose in terms of ethos, we're all about helping them to find their strengths, following a very mainstream, very aspirational academic curriculum that takes them through their GCSEs, through their A-levels, onto university entry. The vast majority of our sixth formers will progress onto university, but it's about focusing their education in their areas of natural aptitude and helping them to become very proud of who they are.
And you interview all the children, don't you, yourself? Is that...
I certainly interview all of their parents and I try and meet all of the boys themselves. But I think it's so important to build that understanding. It's so important that parents themselves can actually speak to the head and understand what makes him tick. Sorry, I'm conscious of my own clock ticking in the background. But I think it's so important that parents get a chance to meet the head, understand him and the school, and be able to build that relationship right from the very beginning, to be able to ask questions, so that further down the line there's every opportunity to ask advice. And we're on a journey together, and it needs to be that camaraderie as we work through in the best interests of the pupils.
And many of the children do go right the way through to university, don't they, and do very well?
Yeah, so the vast majority of our students will join us and then will stay with us throughout, at least until the end of year 11. But even from year 11 into our sixth form, 2/3 to 3/4, depending on each year, will choose to stay with us, do their sixth form, their A-levels with us, or level 3 BTECs that are equivalent to A-levels in some subjects, and then progress on to university. Absolutely. We're not really about preparing pupils to go back into a more mainstream environment. We feel that we are a very mainstream environment in terms of the education that we deliver, the same mainstream curriculum, but we know that our pupils will always benefit from it being delivered in a way that just plays to their strengths, rather than using perhaps some very common teaching methods that disadvantage them. So it's far more about finding an environment that just works for them and allows them to thrive.
You run from junior school, not reception though. My memory from the last time I visited was year 4 entry,
That's right.
Point of entry, all the way through to sixth form, which is incredible. So could you tell me about the entrance points and each different, I mean, obviously it's quite detailed, I'm sure, but like an abbreviated, each segment of the school, and is learning support offered throughout?
Yeah, so, OK, let me try and do that in a fairly concise way. I'm fairly known not being very concise. So year 4 is our earliest entry, so 8 years old, and typically parents will come to us when their child is in year 3, possibly at the end of year 2, but we don't like to see them too early because, of course, a year in a child's lifetime of that age is an enormous amount of time, and they really develop and change. But lots will join us in year 4 or year 5, and we teach our year 4s and 5s together, actually. 3 classes of year 4s and 5s, but each of those 3 classes is mixed. And then year 6 as well is another very common entry point. Pupils will join us for year 5, pupils will join us for year 6, and year 6 we teach in 4 classes, 4 separate classes. Each class is about 12 to 14 pupils in. In fact, within our junior years, it's more like 10 to 12 pupils within a class. And then year 7 is sort of our last proper entry point, really. So we'll get perhaps about a third of the year group again join us for year 7. And that makes our numbers in the year group 70. So we have 70 pupils in year 7 and in year 8 and in year 9 and in year 10 and year 11. And again, class size is 12 to 14 in a class in our year 7 upwards. But we group them differently for English than we do for maths. All of year 7 will sit down to English at the same time in 5 or 6 different classes, and they'll all sit down to maths at the same time as all the other boys in year 7, which means their groups for maths can be different from English. And it means we can really play to each individual pupil's strengths and make sure that he's not just in one stream of ability, but rather he can be in a different group for each subject, so that we make sure that it's giving him the very best opportunity to be challenged and to be supported and to thrive. And then in the 6th form, we probably on any year we might have 2 or 3 pupils who join us, and that's because we tend to be full with our own year 11 pupils going on into the 6th form. Our 6th form is typically about 70 to 80 pupils in our 6th form, comprising the 2 year groups. And then, as I say, the majority of those will go on to university, but others through to apprenticeships or other routes to employment. You mentioned there about learning support, and if I speak about that a little bit, we kind of do that in a very different way from probably any other school in the country. We don't really have classroom assistants. We don't do any one-to-one support in the classroom at all. Instead, our teachers, whether they are an A-level chemistry specialist or whether they teach psychology to year 9 or English and drama to years 4 and 5, every single one of our teachers has a very keen awareness of what the potential barriers are for our sorts of pupils, and they deliver in a way that supports neurodiversity. So intelligent pupils, but pupils who struggle to sustain attention, struggle to process a lot of auditory information. So if the teacher's doing a lot of chalk and talk, they'll miss a lot of that and struggle to concentrate, struggle to get their ideas down on paper, struggle possibly to sequence their ideas and formulate sentences. And so our teachers deliver a mainstream academic curriculum, but just delivered in a way that helps them and supports them. What we do have, though, all of our students access some more specialist provision. We have the Learning Development Centre, which is our largest department in the school. We employ 11 fully qualified speech and language therapists. We employ 10 or 11 dyslexia trained literacy and numeracy tutors, and we have 5 occupational therapists, again fully qualified occupational therapists. And all of our students have some access to that, but it's entirely dependent upon each individual and what his needs are, that we agree with the parents on admissions to the school and also every year as part of an annual review process.
And some of the facilities, I mean, I remember coming round. I mean, you have special rooms, sensory rooms. I remember so well. And kind of.
So our occupational therapy department with sensory integration facilities as well and equipment. And sometimes you'll see one of our occupational therapists might be taking part in a PE lesson or in an engineering lesson. We have our School of Engineering. Even our youngest pupils in year 4 and 5, they go to our School of Engineering for their design technology lessons taught by engineering specialists. And as they get older, so they learn how to use all of the different saws, the mechanical hacksaw, the milling machine, the industrial lathes, and all of that, because education has to be fun, it has to be exciting, and our boys have to be able to see their success and be excited by it.
And a swimming pool too, if I remember right.
And a swimming pool and a school of music. Our jazz band have toured Cuba and New Orleans and been to Toronto, and our concert and brass bands have toured Lake Garda and all sorts of things. It's about giving opportunities for our pupils really to shine.
Yeah. You've covered a lot of my questions already.
Sorry. I get very excited by it all.
Could you tell me about the BTEC opportunities? Just
absolutely.
Because obviously not everyone has to go to university.
No, absolutely. And indeed, you can get into every single university having a BTEC as part of your qualification, even Oxbridge. Now, so we offer BTECs at GCSE equivalent and at A-level equivalent. So, for example, the BTECs are graded differently. They're graded not A, B and C as the A-levels are, but they're graded distinction, merit, pass. And if you get a distinction star in BTEC level 3 BTEC media studies, that's exactly the same number of university admissions points as if you get an A star in A-level mathematics, for example. So they're entirely equivalent in terms of UCAS points. In terms of our offer, the majority of our courses for GCSE pupils are GCSEs, but there are some courses, for example, sport, which we deliver not as a GCSE but as a BTEC instead, the level 2 BTEC, which is exactly equivalent to a GCSE. Media studies as a level 2. Pardon?
Yeah, I think that there's still a lot of confusion about the difference between a BTEC and a GCSE, and many people, I think, believe that that in some way it's a less qualification, but I think it is important to know that you can.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, actually. I'm glad you raised that, because actually I would caution people about thinking that a BTEC is easier, because actually what you get broadly, GCSEs and A-levels have become far more linear in recent years, and everything's saved up to a terminal examination at the end of the 2 years, and you just hope that you've had your Weetabix that morning and everything's going well. The BTECs, actually, all of them now have some examined element as part of them. So there will be somewhere an exam, but very often the teacher and the students, they have that option of choosing when they're going to sit the examined element during the course. So it will be as part of a module, and they'll decide it might be sat in the summer term of year 10, possibly, or in the autumn term of year 11. So that's helpful. But actually, what you get with the BTECs is this series of you're sort of banking marks all the way through. And what you do have to be is pretty organised, and you have to keep up with that level of sort of coursework. And it can be easy to slip behind. So it's really important that you're in an environment where there's the right support that is helping you to keep up to date with things. It does afford you opportunities sometimes to retake modules and to improve on a score that you've got further on down the line. So there's a greater flexibility with the BTECs. We offer it with art as well. We don't do GCSE and A-level art, and instead we do level 2 and level 3 BTEC art, and we feel that that gives our pupils a better portfolio, which allows those who want to, when they're applying for foundation art degrees for art college, just supports them to progress. But for example, within our visual arts faculty, although we teach BTEC art, the photography department, we teach GCSE and A-level photography, for example.
That's interesting. And you've obviously got you've got at the Farnham Art School near you, haven't you?
Yeah, University of the Creative Arts in Farnham.
Yeah, yeah. The boarding, I remember the boarding house. One of the things I remember the most is so homely. But the boarding facilities that you offer are very cosy, very personable. And there's a lovely sense of community, I think, too. How does it benefit the pupils living on site, and what are the boarding families? Are all children there boarders? Do you have some children living locally?
So we are just shy of 500 pupils in total and about a fifth of the school boards. We've got 85 boarders at the moment. The vast majority of our boarders are weekly boarders, so we'll go home every weekend and therefore only spend 4 nights a week, possibly 5 nights a week in school. And that's the sort of the majority experience. So our boarders tend to be from the southeast, but perhaps it is just a bit too much of a journey to make it a reasonable lifestyle to commute daily. But there's a really sort of thriving boarding community, and one of the great things about it is being able to engage in all of the after school clubs and activities and all of the boarding activities in the evening. And we do a lot of work on supporting children, to our boys, to develop their independent living skills, and we support them to become more in control of their lives, more autonomous, through whether it's shopping trips or whether it's beginning to organise events. But it's great. You're in a like-minded community supported by staff who are understanding. For so many of our boys, it helps them to build really strong friendships, to feel really that they are part of a community together and very proud of their school and all of its facilities and all of the superb results that they achieve. And it's just a great opportunity, I think, for our boys. It becomes increasingly popular, actually, as you go through the senior part of the school, and particularly in the sixth form, because so many parents begin to realise, well, how are we going to prepare him to survive when he's leaves school and is living independently, perhaps within halls of residence at university or college or otherwise, and actually through boarding, so they can learn that confidence in sort of community living, all the pros and cons of being around lots of other people, how you balance private time against sociable time. But it's a unique environment, I think. We have such a fantastic boarding staff. Because of the type of school that we are, we get inspected annually, every year, and year after year after year of sort of glowing reports where the inspectors come in and just think this is really something very special that it provides for the boys here. And they see such progress that they make in their confidence.
2 things. I remember you telling me that the school originally was for circus training. It's stuck in my memory when we did it several years ago now. And that obviously kind of that special spirit has stayed in some way. But how would you describe a typical Moore House child's kind of?
Thank you. Well, what we certainly don't describe them as is playing the clown.
No, exactly.
You're right. We were founded in 1939 by quite a visionary headmaster, Brother Joseph Gardner, who the boys had their lessons in the sort of the first part of the day, and then in the afternoons they learned circus skills, and the Frensham Circus became really very, very famous. It was the first circus school, if you like. There isn't a circus now. That pretty much died a death with Brother Joseph in 1947. But what is a typical Moore House boy now? Bright, intelligent. Our boys are all within the average range of intelligence and therefore capable. There's the cognitive ability to manage what is a breadth of GCSEs, aiming to get at least grade 4 or higher, so that's the old grade C. And some of our boys will just walk through with straight 8s and 9s, and probably more of them will be then getting sort of 5s and 6s, and some will be really balancing on that, can I tip over to get that grade 4 pass in English, and that's what they're really working hard at. But it's that sort of level. We very often talk about spiky profiles, and that's a term that perhaps many of your parents might have come across before, where perhaps when some of our pupils have had maybe an educational psychologist's assessment or some sort of literacy diagnostic assessment, and you can see within there a real difference between a disparity between the scores from different tests. And you might see that a pupil is cognitively bright, perhaps their non-verbal reasoning skills might be very strong, or verbally they might be very articulate, they might be quite insightful, so they're clearly intelligent, but perhaps they really struggle in some other areas. Perhaps their speed at which they process information is just weaker, and you can see that comparative difference. Or perhaps their working memory scores are very low, so that's the ability to hold on to information. If you're trying to work out a puzzle, hold on to the different bits of information at the same time and use that information. And it's that disparity, that that you can help. It helps us to be able to see what those hurdles are, the things that are holding those boys back. And so often they've not been aware of that. But once you help them to see what their strengths are, what they're really good at. Sorry, the clock's decided that it's reached an hour, not of this interview. But it's about that disparity between they're bright, they're intelligent, but we need to help them to see it themselves and give them the opportunities to not be held back by their weaker skill areas, but instead to give them the support to develop those, but also to really focus on their areas of strength as well and not let the weaker skill areas hold them back. If our boys are going to be happy and intelligent, then they need to become very conscious of what their strengths are and orientate their higher education and their future career in their areas of natural strength, natural aptitude. And we need to help them to see that and to pursue it.
Thank you so much, John. Such a useful interview, and I'm sure so many parents are going to hopefully enjoy listening and feel inspired by such positivity. And I think that the results that the children are getting at Morehouse is a reflection of the hard work that's going on there.
Thank you. It's a reflection that they are bright. They just need the right environment to thrive. But thank you so much. It's been really enjoyable. And I'm sorry if I've waffled on a bit, but I get carried away.
No, it's been brilliant. It's been so informative and useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John, for speaking to us today and for such an informative and useful interview. I hope you've enjoyed. Stay tuned for more episodes of the Education Corner podcast coming very soon.